Hello everyone, this is Caleb Simpson, and you are watching my 100% walkthrough for The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword for Nintendo Wii. So now that we've completed the Fire Sanctuary, we now have access to the Magma Myth. So go across the bridge, and off to our left there is a Gossip Stone. Now if you haven't actually used that yet, you want to go ahead and play your harp for the butterflies here to make a Gossip Stone appear to get some treasure. After that, be sure to dig into the middle soft soil location, which leads to an underground area that eventually leads to this alcove where there is a piece of heart. If you've been following along with me, this is our 21st piece of heart total, and we're actually almost done with the game. There's actually this is the final heart container that we're working our way towards. We only have 3 more pieces of heart left to go. So for the last little while, we've been completing dungeons to get the flames of the various goddesses, so Faror, Nehru, and Din. So we've been getting those to reforge our sword, to power it up so that we could access the Gate of Time that is in the sealed temple back in Faron. So now that we have finally completed all the reforging of our sword, we now have the Master Sword, and that's awesome. And by the way, that's just like an iconic weapon from the Zelda series in general. It's the legendary sword that we get in most of the games, not all of them. But anyways, so we started out with the Goddess Sword, and if you've been paying attention to the transformations of the sword and you know what the Master Sword looks like, it's pretty obvious that that's what's happening. So it's kind of this cool little, it's almost like a cameo appearance, kind of like, you know? So a lot of players were probably getting excited as it kept changing. But anyways, so that's what's happening. We're getting the Master Sword, and it's awesome, and it's been steadily transforming back into its true shape, or whatever. So that's sweet. And it's been getting powers along the way and stuff, which is very cool. So anyways, now that we have finally reforged it back to the Master Sword, we're finally ready to go to Faron and go back to the Sealed Temple. So earlier in the walkthrough, I was talking about how there's this patch of flowers on the left side here of the behind the temple area, and I suspected that there was a Gossip Stone here, but I was apparently incorrect. I just assumed that every patch of butterflies leads to a Gossip Stone, but that's apparently not true, so this does not actually have a Gossip Stone here, which surprised me, actually. So apparently there's several patches of butterflies throughout the game that don't actually lead to Gossip Stones. The one other place that I can think of off the top of my head is in Skyloft, like in between Oriel and Pero's house and the Skyloft Plaza. There's some butterflies there that don't actually have a Gossip Stone or Goddess Wall associated with them. So that's kind of sad, but yeah, I'm not sure what other patches. I think I've been trying to be good about going out of my way to find butterflies for this walkthrough. I think I've uncovered all of the Gossip Stones so far. I actually have not seen a list of all of the Gossip Stones. Like the few websites I've looked up, they only have a listing of a couple. So I'm not sure that, I guess it's not that important though. It's unlike collectibles like Goddess Cubes or whatever. It's just not as important to know where all the Gossip Stones are. They just lead to treasure anyways, and most of them lead to like monster horns or something, and you're like, woo! I can get a bunch of those if I really need to. Anyway, when you're ready to proceed, you want to enter the sealed temple and speak with the old woman now that we have reforged our swords. We went on this whole journey because that's what she told us to do like 3 dungeons ago. So before you proceed, I would recommend that you go sit on the nearby stool to replenish your health, and there is a jar right next to that that has a fairy in it. So if you are in need of healing for this battle, you want to fill up one of your bottles, then go ahead and do that real quick. At this point we have a lot of health though, so fairies aren't really super helpful at this point. Honestly, the bigger issue for this boss battle is just the fact that we have to do it quickly, so you run out of time. So I do think that saving is very important here, just so that you're not wasting much time if you have to come back here. Because it's kind of like, if you slash them up or whatever, but you don't manage to hit the peg on its head fast enough, then it'll get back up, and you wasted a lot of time because then it will start running around the arena really fast or whatever. You only really get so many chances to knock it down, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Alright, welcome one and all to the second Imprisoned battle. Now for this battle, the boss actually has arms now, which increases the difficulty a little bit. It also has new moves, and it moves a little bit faster. But the process is the same. You just want to attack the toes, and ideally what you want to do is attack 1 foot at a time, because as soon as you destroy all of the toes on 1 foot, then it will make it move significantly slower. So that foot will drag very slowly, but also it does not have any shockwaves anymore, so it means you can walk on that side of the arena very easily. Now, unfortunately, the feet are pretty wide, so you can't quite get around it very easily at certain angles, which is what I was trying to do here, so I accidentally jumped down. Now, at this point, the boss will start climbing up onto the nearby ridge, and you definitely want to stop it from doing that, otherwise it will gain a lot of distance, and that's a problem. So there's 3 different ways of dealing with this. You can press up on the D-pad to use the Groosenator to throw a bomb at the boss, and ideally what you do is you actually throw it at one of the hands, rather than at the back of the boss, for example, or at the toes, because you can break the fingers and toes with the bombs that Groose will shoot. So you can do that. You can also just attack the fingers directly by getting up on an air geyser and breaking the fingers, and this will cause the boss to go back to walking again. The third option actually is to ignore the hands and the Groosenator entirely, because if you break all the toes, the boss will let go anyways, and then it'll just fall over just like it usually does. So you'll notice that I actually already had all of the toes defeated except for 3 of them anyway. So if I had just ignored the hands entirely, and just run over, and while the boss is slowly raising himself up, if I just attacked those remaining toes and destroyed them, the boss would let go with his hands, and then he would fall over just like he usually does. So that's actually a really pretty good big tip. Now when the boss falls over now, what happens is, now that it has these big long arms that get in the way, so you pretty much have to go the long way around, and you pretty much always have to jump down, or take an air geyser up. You have to go up and around or down and around, either way. So go ahead and attack the ceiling spike that is on the boss's forehead. And unfortunately, once again, my calibration was acting up. Seriously, guys, I don't know what's going on with my calibration. It's horrible. This is not normal. Seriously, this game is... it does get uncalibrated, but it doesn't happen very often. But this playthrough has been absolutely awful for me for that. So we have access to the Groosenator now, which is this cannon machine that Groose has designed, and you can press up on the D-pad whenever you want to use this to throw a bomb at the boss, which will stun it. Now this will interrupt whatever the boss is doing, and that's great, and I think they're kind of implying they want you to use it when the boss is climbing, but I think it's way easier to just use your sword for that. So instead, what I actually recommend you do is use it to stun the boss to keep it in place. You're trying to slow down the boss as much as possible. So there's 2 times when I think it's very, very useful to use the Groosenator. One is right now, because we're just getting started, and you want to shoot the boss with it. And when you do this, though, ideally what you do is you want to try and aim at the toes, because you will do damage to them. You'll notice I actually broke 1 toe doing that, and I just did... each toe takes 3 hits, I think it is, or 4 hits, or whatever it is. So I think you do more damage as your sword upgrades anyway. But regardless, so I did some damage to those toes. I broke 1 of them, so that's great. So I want to attack the right foot first, because then I will be able to... I switched feet. I really shouldn't have done that. Should have continued with the right foot, because then it wouldn't have any shockwaves after that. And I did it. Okay. So another useful way to attack this boss is to use the bow and arrow. Now, this will allow you to charge shots with either holding down the A button or just using C to charge up instantaneously, and I think it's really, really powerful. Now, a fully charged shot will destroy a finger or a toe instantaneously. Now, ideally what you want to do is you only want to attack the toes. Now, in my opinion, the best place, or the best use of the bow for this particular tactic is actually to hit the back toes, the single back toe. Because if the boss is ahead of you and you've already destroyed most of the toes, or regardless, just whatever the status is, if you're chasing after the boss, you can use the bow, and you can actually move while shooting too. So if you hold forward on the analog stick so you're running, and then you're shooting at the back toes, this will make it a lot easier. Now you'll notice there I used a little trick where I rolled in between the arm and the body, and this is something you can do. However, you do have to, it does require there's a little bit of space. The boss kind of leans a little bit to the right or the left, so you may or may not have enough room to do this. Now, secondly, the next best place to use the Groosenator, in my opinion, is when this phase starts. After you hit the ceiling spike of the boss, sometimes it will just like start doing this little worm crawly thing, and it goes up an entire rotation around the arena, and that actually, it gains a lot of distance doing that. So it's really horrible. So what's better is to stun it then. Now it doesn't stop once it gets back up like this. It's moving again, so it is steadily just making progress. However, that stopped it from, again, going around an entire rotation. So that was a huge thing. Like, if our whole goal of the Groosenator is to stop the boss from progressing, this will definitely do that. You see what I mean? Like, it makes it way easier. Now, the third really good use of the Groosenator, in my opinion, is to make this significantly easier. Jumping on the boss's head is one of the easiest ways to hit the ceiling spike directly. You don't have to worry about the toes at all. So if I actually wait, so like at this point, the Groosenator is probably about to recharge as the boss is trying to climb. So I could shoot it right now, but I actually don't want to do that. Instead, I want to attack the fingers to knock it down, and then it'll start walking again, because it's not moving anyways right now. It doesn't matter, and I'm already in position, so it's fine. So the Groosenator is ready. That's great. So instead, run forward, get in position, and then what I can do is I can just shoot the boss to stun it, and then while it's stunned, I will be able to jump on its head and hit the ceiling spike without having to worry about the boss shaking me off. So as usual, if I'm going to be shooting the boss anyways, I aimed at the toes to hopefully break some of them, and indeed I broke one of them, damaged the other two. That's great. And as long as the boss is stunned, I'm going to go ahead and jump on the head and hit the ceiling spike. So that's the other way of doing that. So again, you can attack the boss when it's trying to climb with the Groosenator, which is what they're kind of trying to get you to do. I actually think that's bad. Instead, it's better to use it to stun the boss so you can get closer to the toes, stun the boss so you can get on top of its head, or to stun it when it's doing that crawly worm thing and it's all red and blinking and invulnerable. Those are the 3 times when I think it's very useful to use the Groosenator. So the Groosenator is awesome. It's definitely the most powerful thing you have access to for this battle. The other most powerful thing you have access to is definitely going to be the bow. And again, I think that attacking it from behind to hit those single toes is definitely the best. Otherwise, again, you can use the geysers to get ahead of the boss. Like literally, you just jump down, go to the opposite side, get back on the air geysers, so you're ahead of the boss, and then just shoot him from there. If you have a straight shot at the boss, it's actually pretty easy. The one other thing that I would comment about with this boss is just that the arms themselves are really awkward. Like, the boss will, you saw I was able to roll in between its arms that one time, and that was okay. One thing I will say about it is the boss, because it has these arms now, it's like too close to the edge. You can't walk around the boss. You pretty much have to take an air geyser up or jump down and take another air geyser down. Now, one thing I've had happen before, though, you want to be careful. I would recommend you take an air geyser that's far away from the boss if you go below, because what happens is if you use an air geyser that's like right next to the middle of the boss's body, then what happens is you'll hit the body and then fall back down and you'll waste time. Now, it is possible, and I've had this happen before, many times actually, where I go into an air geyser, I hit the boss's body, I fall back down, landed in an air geyser, and then I just keep going back and forth, bonking against him over and over and over again in this perpetual cycle until the boss gets back up. And then I have to attack the toes all over again. It's just horrible. It's so frustrating. In fact, one of my practice sessions, not this time, this is several years ago now, but one of my practice sessions for this game, when the game first came out, I actually did this entire battle. I think it was even during the trial with Lineru later on, which is the boss rush mode. I was doing that, I think, and I was really far in it, and I lost because that happened over and over again. Like, I had that happen to me, like, 6 times in a row. And so the boss got all the way to the temple, and I never actually hit the ceiling spike ever. And I was so mad. So just be warned of that. So instead of taking the closest air geyser, you do actually want to run pretty far. I know it's kind of nerve-wracking because you don't have a lot of time, but you'll save more time than messing up and then trying again. So it's more worthwhile to make sure you're taking an air geyser that's way far away from the boss, so you're guaranteed that you are not going to bonk into the body when you zip back up. I usually jump down and then take an air geyser, but you can always do it the other way around too, and take an air geyser up and then hop down from above. It's probably better, honestly, because you can see the boss better. Whatever you want to do. Once you've defeated the Imprisoned for the second time, return to the sealed temple to meet up with the old woman and Groose once again. Oh man, so many cool things that happened in a short period of time right there. So Nintendo really went all out for this. This is the 25-year anniversary of Zelda with Skyward Sword, and this is a prequel to all the other games in the series at this point. And of course, that can all change. Nintendo was going kind of on a kick around this time frame of just making a prequel after prequel after prequel. So it just keeps happening over and over again. So Skyward Sword is like, guess what? They're releasing another prequel. Like, yay! Of course they are. But anyways, I think they did a really good job here, and I really like how they have some lore now to explain why Zelda has powers in future games that take place. So I just think it's really cool. And something else I will mention that's really neat, I think is super cool, is so at this point you can actually walk behind the old woman or just walk up to these double doors, and because one of the doors is ajar, you can actually see inside that room, and you can see that there's that orange crystal. So some players may have looked in there, but honestly a lot of people didn't. And one of the reasons for that actually is the character design of the old woman. She's short and stubby or whatever, and she's often sitting down, but she has this long teepee hat thing going on, and that blocks your vision of the slit in the door. So they actually designed her that way. It's very obvious, from a character design perspective, that they designed her that way on purpose for that reason. That's why she has this really silly looking getup, is actually because of that. But I think it's really cool though, because if you knew that Zelda was back there, then you could have looked through the crack and you would have especially if you played some of the other games and you knew kind of what that signified, you would have been like, oh, she's right there! I don't know. I just think that's super cool. So Skyward Sword is actually filled with a lot of little, not necessarily Easter eggs, but a lot of little details like that, where if you know to look for it, you'll actually see these things very early in the game, actually. And there's some more things like this throughout the game where if you knew something was there, you would have realized, anyways, I don't want to spoil anything, so I don't want to reveal any more like that, but there's more stuff like this throughout the game. There's one really big one later at the very end of the game that's super cool that I really love, and I will show that later. So before you leave, Groose will call out to you, and he explains that he wants to plant a tree here in this little garden area that's off to one side of the Seal Temple to make things a little bit nicer and like pretty up the place for Granny, just to make it a little brighter and happier and stuff like that. And that's all well and good, but just bear that in mind because that is a very important clue for something we have to do later on for the main storyline quest. So there, Nintendo is giving you this little really firm clue at this point so that you remember that. So just bear that in mind. Can't actually do anything with that yet, but that will be important later. So again, you can check out in between the doors, you can see the crystal, and you can actually faintly see Zelda's outline, just barely, but I just think that's awesome. Like, if you knew she was there, you could have actually looked between the doors earlier in the game, you would have seen that. So I just think that's really cool. And actually, the whole crystal thing has been something that's been in other Zelda games, like, I know a lot of you probably think of Ocarina of Time, but I always think of A Link to the Past, actually, is what this portion of the game reminds me of, because there was lots of crystals, lots of maidens and crystals in that game. So with that, you want to return to a bird statue and go back to the sky. So that's actually the end of this video, folks. Join me for the next one where we'll return to Skyloft. So as always, thank you so much for watching, stay awesome, have an amazing day, and I will see you next time. Oh yeah, World of Warcraft Classic, the old feels. We're feeling it right now. They've made so many improvements to the UI and stuff over the years. This was great. It was so usable. Everything's wonderful, though. There's nothing really that needs to be changed. Well, except for one thing. Yeah, see? It's nothing changed. Just slight moderations. I mean, look at this. Look at this classic feels right here. There's only one thing I can do at this point. Need some music to go along with this. Yeah.